My name is Jack, and this is something I've never told anyone before, but tonight I felt I had to write it down. I was 12 years old when my family moved to a small town called Oakville. Our new house was old, abandoned for over 20 years. Dad said he got it cheap, and now I know why. On the first day I felt something strange. The air was heavy, like it was pressing on my chest. Mom said it was just dampness, but my dog refused to enter. He just stood at the door whining softly until we had to leave him outside. The first night I heard footsteps. They were light, like someone running barefoot upstairs. I thought it was mice, but mice don't make sighing sounds. Human sighs. The sound of a small child crying. It continued every night. I would cover my head with the blanket, mumbling nursery rhymes Mom used to sing, but the sound got closer. Night after night, the crying came from inside my own room. On the third night, I opened my eyes and saw her, a little girl wearing a torn white dress, standing at the foot of my bed. Her hair was long and black, covering her face, but her eyes were clearly visible, red as fire. She didn't move, just stood there, gasping with cold breath. I wanted to scream, but my voice froze in my throat. I tried to get up, but my body was paralyzed. I spent a full hour staring at her until she disappeared with the dawn of a new day. I told Dad in the morning. He laughed. He said it was nightmares because of the new house, but Mom didn't laugh. I noticed she was very pale and that she avoided the upstairs entirely. After a week, I found an old notebook under the floorboards in the basement. It was written in a child's handwriting. The name Rose Morrison, the girl who lived in this house in 1957. I read the first few pages. They were normal, about dolls, cats, and school. But the last pages made my heart stop. Father is angry today. He hit Mother again. He says we are evil and the devil lives in us. He locks me in the basement with the rats. The darkness hurts my eyes. I hear voices whispering to me from the walls. They say Father will be punished. They say blood is beautiful. The next page was torn, then another. The words became illegible, just wavy red lines. Apparently she had written with her fingernails. I searched online for the Morrison family. I found news from a very old local newspaper. Tragedy at Morrison House. Entire family disappears under mysterious circumstances. Neighbors said they heard screaming all night, then silence. When the police entered, they found empty rooms. No bodies, no blood, nothing. Only Rose's little notebook on the floor, open to the last page. And written there was, "They have finally come for us. Father, Mother, my little brother. They said we will be with them forever. I am scared. They are not human. Their eyes are red." I stopped reading and felt a shiver run down my spine. At that exact moment, I heard a sound from upstairs. Not footsteps this time. The sound of a little girl singing. "Rose, little Rose, sleep, little Rose." It was a beautiful voice, but it was coming from the wall behind me. I turned slowly and saw something I regretted seeing. The wall was moving, breathing, like a giant lung. And suddenly, faces began to appear. Not normal human faces. They were distorted, stretched with glowing red eyes. One of them smiled at me, its mouth stretched from ear to ear, full of teeth sharp as sewing needles. It whispered in a hoarse voice, "We have waited for you for a long time, Jack. Rose said you would come. She said you look like her." I ran as fast as I could outside. I didn't look back. I reached the street gasping for air and looked at the house. The windows were dark and normal, but in my bedroom window, I saw a small shadow. Rose was waving at me. Then she turned off the light. I never slept in that house again. I convinced my parents to leave after a week when Mom started seeing things too. Now, 20 years later, I've returned to Oakville. The house is still standing. No one lives in it. No one goes near it. My new neighbors told me that last night they heard a little girl crying. Then they said something that made me decide to write this here. They said, "She was calling your name, Jack. She said, 'Come play with me.' I will never go back. But I feel she knows I wrote this story because the light in my room just started flickering and a small voice whispers from under the bed, 'Found you.'" The Holloway Guest House. My name is Sarah. I was working as a traveling nurse in 2019 when I was asked to cover a night shift at an abandoned guest house that had been used as a temporary hospital in the 1940s. The building was on Harlow Way, far from the city, surrounded by dry trees and thick fog. The head nurse told me before I entered, "Don't be alarmed by the sounds, just ignore them, and if you hear your name, never ever answer." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. The shift was quiet at first. The only patient on the third floor, an old man named Mr. Crawley, was sleeping soundly. I sat in the nurse's station, reading an old book I found on the shelf. It was the diary of a nurse who worked here in 1944. Her name was Margaret. I read the first line. "Day 3 in this dreadful place. I feel the walls are watching me. The patients whisper nonsense. But tonight I saw it." A sound from the hallway made me look up. Heavy footsteps, like a large body dragging itself on the floor. I stopped and waited. The sound stopped too, then it started again, closer this time. This went on for hours. Whenever I moved, the footsteps followed. But there was no one in the hallway. At 2 a.m., I heard a knock on the nurse's station door. 3 slow, regular knocks. I opened the door slowly. There was no one there. But on the floor, I found an old red scarf. It was velvet, embroidered with small letters. Margaret. A chill ran over me. Margaret was the nurse who died here in 1944. I asked the senior nurse about her before my shift. She told me Margaret had disappeared suddenly. They found her clothes torn in the basement, covered in a black, sticky substance. They never found her body. I returned to Margaret's diary. The next pages were horrifying. She wrote about a patient in room 47 who always asked for water at midnight. But when nurses entered his room, they found the bed empty. Then the nurse would disappear. Margaret was investigating. She wrote, "Today I entered room 47 despite everyone's warnings. I saw something on the bed, not a patient, something black with yellow eyes. It opened its mouth and said to me, 'Come, Margaret, come to the well. I have waited for you for a long time.'" The last page of the diary was terrifying. Margaret wrote in a faltering hand, "I will go tonight. I can no longer resist. Their voice is so beautiful. They say if I go down to the well, I will see the light. But I know what is in the well is not light. It is living darkness. It swallows. If you are reading this, never look into the basement mirror. It is not a mirror. It is its eye." I couldn't stop thinking about the well. I asked the senior nurse if there was a well in the building. She was silent for a moment, then said, "There was a well behind the building. We covered it with a concrete slab in 1950. Don't ask why." During my dawn break, I walked outside. The fog was very thick, but I found the concrete slab. It was huge, but it had shifted slightly from its place, as if something was pushing it from below. I moved closer. I heard a faint sound, a moan, a beautiful moan, like sad singing from afar. Then I heard my name. "Sarah, Sarah, come to the well. It's warm down here. We are waiting for you." The voice was multiple. Men, women, children, all whispering in perfect harmony. I stood frozen, feeling a strange desire to remove the slab and go down there. I wanted to know what was down there. It was a terrifying curiosity, as if my mind was no longer my own. At that moment, I remembered the nurse's warning, "Don't answer your name." I covered my ears and ran inside. But when I reached the foyer, I saw the basement door was open. I was sure I had closed it tightly. From the dark opening, cold vapor was rising. Then I saw the mirror Margaret mentioned. It was a large mirror on the wall opposite the stairs, but it didn't reflect the room in front of it. It reflected something else, a dark, damp place, a well. And in the well, there were eyes, thousands of eyes, all looking at me. In the center of the mirror, there was a face, the face of a beautiful woman, but her skin was gray and her eyes were yellow. She opened her mouth and said, "Margaret was weak, but you are stronger. Come, we will make you queen of the well." I didn't hesitate this time. I ran outside, got in my car and left. I never told anyone what I saw. I resigned the next day. 3 years later, I returned to Harlow Way out of stupid curiosity. The guest house was still abandoned, but the windows were broken and the walls were eroded. I approached the back door. It was open. I entered slowly. Everything was the same, but the basement was closed with a new lock. When I turned to leave, I saw something on the wall, written in strange white script. "Thank you for visiting, Sarah. Come again. The well loves you." I tried to wipe the writing off with my hand, but it was under the paint, as if written from inside the wall itself. Then I heard the voice from underground. "Sarah, Sarah, the well hasn't forgotten you." I left the building and will never return. But tonight, as I was writing this story, the dog stopped barking suddenly. He looked at the back door and lowered his ears. Then I heard a knock. 3 slow, regular knocks. And when I opened the door, the red scarf was on the ground, new, clean. And on top of it was a small note that said, "Welcome back, Sarah. The well misses you." My name is David. I was a photographer specializing in abandoned places. I've visited hundreds of old buildings, abandoned hospitals, rusted factories, dilapidated mansions. I never felt fear. But Villa Rosetta changed everything. In 2017, I received a message from a European magazine asking me to photograph an old villa in the Italian countryside. The villa was built in 1890 for a wealthy family named Rossi. In 1925, the entire family disappeared overnight. The story goes that they were hosting a large dinner party, and in the morning the servants found the tables full of food, the glasses filled with wine, and the chairs neatly arranged. But no Rossi family and no guests. 23 people vanished, as if they had evaporated into thin air. I arrived at the villa at sunset. It was huge, in a beautiful Gothic style, surrounded by a wild garden and tall cypress trees standing like guards. The main door was slightly ajar, swaying in the wind. I entered and walked through the large foyer. The chandelier still hung, covered in dust. The furniture was covered in white sheets, as if someone had just left. I started taking pictures. Everything was perfect. The light coming through the broken windows was dramatic, the dust floating in the air like snow. But when I looked at my camera, I noticed something strange. In every photo, there was a shadow. A long, thin shadow standing in the corner of the frame. I turned to look behind me. There was no one. I thought it was just a trick of the light, so I went upstairs. There I found a huge master bedroom. The bed was made, the pillows still holding their shape. On the nightstand, there was a photograph of a very beautiful woman, brunette with green eyes. Behind her, a handsome man with a thick beard, written on the frame, Rosetta and Alessio, 1923. While photographing the room, I heard music. It was distant, faint, as if coming from a dance party on the ground floor. Old jazz music, piano and violin, and laughter. I ran down the stairs. When I reached the foyer, the music stopped abruptly. Then I heard dancing footsteps on the tiles. In the dining room, I found the table full of food, fresh food, hot soup, bread, cheese, red wine. The glasses were filling by themselves. I sat on a chair, feeling a strange dizziness. Then I saw her. Rosetta was standing at the end of the table, wearing a long red dress, her black hair cascading over her shoulders. She looked at me with her green eyes and smiled. She said, "You're late for dinner, David. Everyone is waiting for you." I tried to get up, but my body wouldn't move. Rosetta approached and placed her hand on my shoulder. Her hand was very cold, cold as ice. She whispered in my ear, "Alessio will get tired of waiting. He doesn't like late guests." Suddenly, men and women appeared around the table. They were wearing 1920s clothes, short dresses and formal suits, but their eyes were empty, no white, no black, just void. They began eating in silence, cutting meat and drinking wine. But there were no chewing sounds, no dish sounds, total silence while they chewed thin air. Rosetta sat next to me and said, "Don't be afraid. We just want you to stay with us forever. The place has been so lonely since the servants left. There were 23 of us, but we need the 24th. She whispered something to Alessio, who was sitting at the head of the table. He was a huge man with a thick beard and black eyes. He looked at me and said in a deep, thunderous voice, "The camera, give me the camera." Trembling, I gave it to him. He looked at the pictures I had taken and said, "Beautiful, but you haven't photographed the secret room yet. come. I got up involuntarily, as if invisible strings were pulling me behind him. We walked down a long, dark hallway until we reached a small iron door. Alessio opened it, and we descended a spiral staircase into a dark, damp basement. In the center of the basement there was a well, not a well of water, a well filled with human bones. Alessio said, "This is our real place. Everyone who comes to the villa, we take them to the well. Then we wear their faces. We go out into the world. We live their lives. Don't you want to live forever, David?" Then I understood. The Rossi family hadn't disappeared. They had transformed into something else. Demons who take human form, hunting victims in their beautiful villa, and I was next. At that moment I remembered advice from an old photographer friend. If you feel fear in an abandoned place, raise your camera and shoot. The camera sees what your eyes don't. Sometimes the photograph drives them away. I raised my camera and photographed Alessio directly. The flash illuminated the entire basement. For a moment I saw him for what he really was. He wasn't a handsome man. He was a black creature with long horns and glowing red eyes. He screamed loudly and vanished like smoke. I ran up the stairs, through the hallway, into the foyer. Rosetta was standing at the door, trying to stop me. I photographed her face too. She turned into a large black raven flying away screeching. I jumped out the door and ran across the garden. When I reached my car, I looked at the villa for the last time. It was dark, silent, normal, but in a third-floor window I saw a face, Rosetta's face. She was smiling and waving at me. Then she closed the curtain. I returned home, opened my camera to look at the pictures. All the pictures were empty, except one photo, the photo of the well. And in the well there was a reflection of my own face, but I hadn't been standing there. In the reflection I was standing inside the well, surrounded by bones, and my eyes were empty. Now, years later, I still hear the music sometimes. In the middle of the night it comes from under the floor. Old jazz music, piano and violin and laughter, and Rosetta's whisper, "You photographed us, David. Now you are part of the picture. You are part of us forever." I locked the camera in a metal cabinet. But tonight, as I was writing the story, I heard the sound of the camera shutter taking a picture by itself. I looked at it. It was a picture of my bedroom. And above my bed, there was a long, thin shadow, green eyes glowing in the dark. Rosetta said, "Smile for the camera, David. This will be your last picture."